All right. I call the December 6th meeting of the Planning and Transportation Commission to order. For the record, show that all commissioners are present. We have a relatively short agenda tonight, but I will point out that we have one item on the consent calendar, which is the minutes of November 15th, and I believe we have a correction in that in the roll call, please note that Vice Chair Moisen was recused, not absent.
Be sure to tell Yvonne that.
Lest she mark him in the absent column, which we don't like. Are there any other comments to the minutes, or can I have a motion to approve?
Did you ask for public comment?
I didn't ask for public comment. Oh, excuse me?
I'm sorry to get ahead of
Anybody
things.
who is here from the public who would like to speak on an issue which is not on our agenda, please fill out one of these pieces of paper and hand it out here, and you may speak now. Thank you very much.
You're quite welcome.
We were about
I hope it's about public art. Okay.
Let me guess the subject.
All right. Maddie McBurney, would you please speak?
Hi, I did a presentation for BPAC concerning the artistic bike racks that I've been researching. And what I did was I went door to door to the merchants and did a survey of their interest in artistic bike racks, if they'd like one or not, if the city would pay for it. It wasn't to get them to do it. It was just a questionnaire. And because this was brought to the Public Art Commission as something that a citizen, more than one citizen, would like us to pursue. So I did the survey. I did a presentation for them. They asked me if I'd done a presentation for you guys. And, of course, the usual government, go from here to there to there to there. So I'm here sort of seeing if you could put me on the agenda at some point so I could do the presentation for you, and you can see what I'm talking about. Okay? It's just a few slides. It's not very long or anything. And it's just, I'm trying to get a system for our city if someone wants to have a creative artistic bike rack. What's the process? Because there is no process right now. Okay.
Any questions for Maddie?
Are you around in December and January?
Yeah.
If we wanted, if we can't act on it now, but we can agendize
Yeah, I'm
things at the
around.
end of this meeting.
Yeah.
And so you're not disappearing.
No, I'm not going away.
Okay. We might
my
not
daughter's
do
coming home.
something, if we decided to agendize it, we might not do it in December because we apparently are losing some commissioners, but I just thought I'd check. In January, you're around.
Yeah, I'll be here.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
I have no other requests to speak on items not on the agenda, so I will return to the Planning and Transportation Commission minutes.
Sorry to get
Thank
you
you.
off.
No, thank you very much. So are there any other comments about the minutes other than that change from absent to recusal? May I have a motion to approve, please?
Can I make a motion to adopt the minutes as corrected?
Which particular minutes are you?
The minutes from the Planning and Transportation Commission special meeting study session,
No.
No?
November 15th.
November 15th. Do we have to do the other ones as well?
Can we do it as all in one?
You can do it in one motion, that's why I was asking.
Okay. So for both the minutes, on the December 15th calendar, the special study session as well as the normal regular meeting of the Planning and Transportation Commission?
The-
You meant all three meetings?
Oh, that's right. Then we have the third one with the joint
We've been a little behind the eight ball game.
I will second that.
All three meetings.
All three meetings.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
This motion passes unanimously. All 3 minutes are passed. Okay, we are into our next and sole item, which is a wayfinding committee report from Kathy Kleinbaum. And I should point out to the commissioners that I was part of this subcommittee.
And who else was on the committee?
I can report on that.
Oh, I think we'll let Kathy fill in.
Oh.
Sure. So good evening. I'm really excited to be before you tonight to show you the
Drop
draft.
the mic, I'm having.
Everybody turn on your screens, turn on
And I found out that the pedestal go up if you want.
The lectern lift.
my goodness.
Really?
Yeah, Mike did it yesterday. It was very impressive. It still wasn't tall enough,
I
but
think-
it was
I think
better.
I
Didn't make that.
I think you're the first person to discover that, Mike. And necessity is the mother of
Every time I
invention.
talk to him for more than 5 minutes, I have to go to a chiropractor.
Yeah.
Okay, are we good now?
Much better.
Okay. Well, I'm really excited to be before you tonight to show you the draft wayfinding sign concept that I've been working on with a task force of many wonderful citizens, including Phoebe. In addition to Phoebe on the task force, Val Carpenter, our mayor, Ron Packard, city council person, was also on it, Scott O'Brien, representing the chamber, Ellen Hall, representing Loyola Corners. He's the owner of Snap Fitness out there. Brooke Ray Smith, representing Pastoral Investment Properties and downtown property owners. We also had Jeff Brunello, representing Lava. And
Lori.
and of course, our design consultant, Lori Winters, who is from Explore Creative. So let's get this started. So the main purpose of this project was to develop a concept for commercial wayfinding signs, not just for the downtown, but for all the commercial districts in the city. The city does have some existing signs, but they're sort of hodgepodge, to put it mildly, and they're not actually fully complete. So they'll guide you to turn off of a street, but not tell you where to turn from there. So we're looking at creating a really complete system of signs, also signs that point to public parking resources, and also to just create an identifiable brand for Los Altos. So this next slide shows you the variety of signs that we have in this town. There's the Civic Center monument signs, which do match the signs along Foothill Corridor, but there's also a lot of the hand-carved wooden signs, which can be hard to read. And then there, of course, is the stone monuments, which are throughout town, which are really kind of iconic of the city of Los Altos. But altogether, there's not one cohesive theme to these signs, and partially because of that, it can be hard to locate the signs because your eyes aren't trained to look for a particular design or shape or color or anything. So the main inspiration for this design concept was really based on the rustic environment of Los Altos, but it's also a very modern environment. So we really didn't want to fall in the trap that a lot of communities fall into, where they sort of have the old-fashioned, ye olde town signs. We're not an old town. We are, from 1960. So we wanted to really have a modern, clean feel, but still represent that rustic environment. So the main materials in these signs are reclaimed wood, which is also really important because it is more durable. It's really already been weathered. It doesn't warp from the rain. So it's a really good material. It's more expensive at the beginning, but it should last longer than if we used newer wood. And then also iron, sort of representing the history of the former train in the town, and stone, matching both the monuments that are throughout town and also the stone sit walls that are part of the downtown streetscape improvements. So there's a whole family of signs that go with this concept. It's not just one size fits all. It really depends on the location that the sign is, what works, what makes sense. A lot of this has to do with the width of the medians or the speed that cars are viewing the signs from. Or, for example, with the last sign, that's a post-mounted sign, because there are some locations where you just can't put a stone base and there's not enough space in the ground. So this set of sign families, what we'll go over first, are the ones that are citywide, that'll really point people to the commercial destinations, including the downtown. And then a little later, we'll go into the downtown packet, which is more about the internal signs of the downtown, including all the parking signs. So this is the main sign type A, which is for the fast expressways, so Foothill, El Camino. It's designed to match the dimensions of the existing signs on Foothill, because the county has said that they would allow us to swap out those signs without going through an extensive review process with them, because they match the same dimensions of what's already there. I just want to note that the uplighting that's shown on the sign, it's just part of the overall concept. It may be very expensive or impractical to actually implement. As nice as it would be, there's not a lot of electrical service out to those medians. So it may not be, it's probably pretty unlikely that that'll come to pass as part of the signs, but it is shown on some of the sign concepts, not all. So just,
Can I ask one
Sure.
question? When these signs, when the original design was done, was there any consideration as to cost?
there was some consideration as to cost, but I will say that the task force went pretty quickly towards a more deluxe model.
And actually, Marcia, our town manager, was there and was very careful to keep us more or less under control. There was a lot more stone. It got reduced. The signs themselves are interchangeable, so if there was some change in the content, we didn't lose the sign. You simply pulled off the plaque and put a new one. There was some consideration to that.
Okay, I was just curious, because
Yeah.
we had bus shelters, otherwise known as Mercedes, that apparently were, there was
Just
an
for
original
looks.
design, and there was an effort to cost reduce, but it started off as a Mercedes, and I think it moved to a Lexus, but, so I was just, yeah.
Zero.
1-0, only 1-0 in that case.
And then
Well,
I
this
have
is
a-
not the economy model, but it's somewhere in between. We did originally look at some all stone and metal work signs that would have been through the roof.
I was just curious.
Was there any look at using solar panel across the top to do the lighting?
We're,
No.
He's cheating. He looked over your shoulder.
That's not right.
we haven't gotten that level of design yet. That could be something that we look into towards implementation. I think the top of the signs is not that.
It's 6
thick.
inches wide. I don't know if
Yeah.
a strip could, it's 6 by 4, so that's 2 square feet. And I have no idea what the solar capacity would generate in that area, but it just seems like a natural thing.
Yeah, I mean,
I feel the same way.
that could
But
be a
let's
great
let
idea.
Kathy finish her
I just have
presentation.
a quick question.
Questions, okay.
You're showing the uplight. Isn't that some restriction for us
dark
to?
side?
Yeah.
That she said it was a concept. She didn't say that. I think the concept is
Some
can
light.
we light them
Got
at
it.
night in the middle of the median strip? And we have. It shouldn't be an uplight, and could it be solar? And now we'll let Kathy continue.
Okay. So let me just go over some of the design details on this first one, and we'll go through the next ones a little bit more quickly. So first of all, we decided to have a header and all the signs with Los Altos at the top, and it's in the same script as is the stone monuments that are throughout town. And we really feel like this creates a branding for the town. It helps you identify where you are, and also it really just matches the overall look and feel of the existing town identifiers that are already there. The signs themselves are, so it's the reclaimed wood with a metal frame around it on the stone base, and then the placards will be affixed with these sort of rustic iron screws, and as messages need to change, or the signs get vandals, or something happens, those can be removed and the main part of the sign can still remain. So there's also examples of various different messages on the side and what arrows would look like. We went through various arrow designs to even get to those arrows. So this is the sign type that would be along the collector streets, primarily San Antonio, with I think a couple on El Monte. And these signs are taller to allow for a more in-depth message, but also a little bit thinner. So this is probably the majority of the signs will be of this type. There was some talk about having a graphic at the bottom of the sign on the wood, and we went through many, many iterations of various graphics to see if we liked them or didn't like them. So this is sort of the one graphic that in the end I think sort of floated to the top. But I would say that the majority of the committee actually prefers them without the graphic. But we did just want to show a graphic option so people can weigh in on that debate. And this is the sign type that is the monument signs that will replace the existing Civic Center signs that are, at the entrances to the Civic Center driveways with the Civic Center addresses. And here's the alternative version of the signs that are post-mounted, and these are really just for the locations where it doesn't work to do the larger signs. One example is coming off of Foothill onto San Antonio. We wanted to have a sign that could show you to turn on First Street, but the median is really narrow and all concrete, probably only a foot or two wide. So this is the only type of sign that would work there.
And let me point out while Kathy's doing this that she and Lori personally went to every single site that's on the map to determine which ones where it was viable and where it wasn't. And so if you have specific issues with something, she has it all.
And then I was curious, just because my height's close to it, why 6'9"?
I believe they were,
That's a code, I think.
It's the
I
traffic.
think it's the code.
The traffic code?
Yeah.
The code.
I thought it was 7 feet, so I'm not sure why it's 9. So now we're moving on to the downtown sign family. So these are the ones that are going to be specifically within the downtown district.
Can I ask a question about the last slide, real quick?
Sure.
Is there a reason that Los Altos doesn't have that sort of cute look and feel as the others?
For these signs, because they're much smaller, these are mostly 30 by 36. There's just not as much room to have as much messaging. So that is, the messages for downtown Los Altos are usually in that script, and the header is the only one that's in the fancier script. Not that it couldn't be changed depending on the sign.
That's a good catch by the way.
So this is the downtown sign family that is mostly the 2 entry markers to the actual downtown district and the parking signs. I just want to note on this slide that the parking signs, for the most part, because we have parking plazas on either side of Main and State, and those are going to be littered throughout downtown, we wanted to make them as innocuous as possible. And so we figured the best location for them was hanging from the light poles, where the existing street signs already are. That way we're not adding that many new poles to the downtown. They're not getting in the way of car doors and all sorts of maintenance issues. And I think they'll work. Their drivers will know where to look for them, but they'll be sort of a little bit more out of sight. And then the last sign type are the parking plaza identity signs, which will be at the head of every parking plaza so people can actually hopefully remember where they parked or which one they parked in.
And how is the lettering placed on that? Is it etched into the wood?
I believe that's supposed to be printed.
On the sign.
On the
in
sign.
green background.
So these are the downtown monument signs, 2 different sizes depending on the location. So I'll get into the context pictures. So here's one which would be in the flowered median, which is at the foot of Main, where it intersects with Edith and San Antonio. I personally find that when you're looking at that, because there's office buildings at sort of the gateway to the downtown from that end, you don't really get a sense of arrival in the downtown, so you're about a half a block up. So hopefully this will help welcome people to the downtown. And then the other one will replace this sign, which is right up on Main Street where it intersects Foothill. That sign, I think, was originally intended to be a directional sign telling people where to turn on Foothill, but like a lot of our existing signs, by the time it tells you this is where the turn is, it's too late to actually move over and make the turn. So we'll replace that and make it more of an entry monument. Here again is the parking signs.
And we should note that it deliberately says 3 hour to tell people that if they're going to be in town more than, say, 2 hours on the main street, they should park in the plazas.
And these signs are fairly inexpensive to manufacture. These type of signs, they just be printed signs. So if we ever change the hours of our parking plazas in the future, it wouldn't be that cost prohibitive to change out the signs. And we are working on the parking management study, but that'll be done long before these signs are ever going forward to manufacture. So we don't need to worry about the hours changing at that from that study. This is the parking plaza identity signs. You may notice the names here. There was some discussion within our task force of maybe renaming the plazas and changing the numbering system. Regardless of whether that goes forward or not, I think the overall design of the signs would remain the same. It's just whether they're called Redwood or South or Central. So I just don't want that to be a major topic of concern. And there's a whole bunch of pictures of those in context. So this was raised in an email that Jim Wing had sent to Phoebe and to myself prior to the meeting. We were somewhat concerned about the line of sight, and because these signs are pretty large, so they can be seen. So, you know, our initial take on the location of these signs is to have them up against the plazas, as far up as possible, as opposed to being in that landscape strip that's adjacent to the roadway. This way, they will not block car visibility as much when they're coming in and out of the plazas. But it's definitely, they'll need to be really carefully sited as we move forward. All the locations and everything that you've seen in this package are just really schematic. They're based on field observations, but they haven't had any detailed traffic engineering review. So in your packet, you have the map of all the the main citywide locations, and if anyone has any concerns or questions about that, we can certainly go over them. And there's also the map of the locations within the downtown. This one looks a little more intense than it actually is because there's, a sign on every other corner in the downtown for the parking signs. But I think they'll be pretty innocuous and pretty small. And as Phoebe was mentioning, we did do a photo survey of each and every location for the signs. So myself and the consultant went out, we played Frogger and ran across several lanes of traffic in El Camino and all those locations to really look at what locations made the most sense. So there's a lot of constraints for these signs. You need to have, I think, 2 feet clear on either side of the sign. So the medians have to be wide enough to accommodate them. There's a lot of trees and other obstructions in the way that would make the signs hard to read when you're driving. So the signs on the map may not always look like they're in exactly the right place where you would want to put a sign. I did an original version before we did the field work, and a lot of things ended up moving based on the actual field conditions. And this is all schematic, and we go forward and they're budgeted and we go to implement them. We certainly will be reevaluating each and every one of these locations. And especially in El Camino and Foothill, I'm sure the county will be, and Caltrans will be too. And also in your packet was a really, really long spreadsheet for both the downtown and the citywide that shows all the messages on each and every sign. And so we did go through several rounds of revisions with all of these. I'm not going to go through them with you guys tonight, but if anyone has any comments or feels we got something wrong, please let us know. So this was essentially the basic schematic design. We're showing it to all the stakeholders who participated in the task force, and we're just trying to get as much input as possible before we take this to City Council. And following that, we'll be developing a further cost estimate for actually implementing the signs, programming it in the CIP, and once we're ready to go forward, then we'll do the detailed traffic engineering. It's probably going to be a phased project because these are not inexpensive signs, and we'll have to figure out the priorities of which ones go first based on, I guess, council and planning commission recommendations. That's it.
Does anybody have specific questions before I take hearing from the public to ask Kathy for clarifications now? Not that you can't do it later, too.
I have questions, but it can be later or...
Okay, why don't we hold our questions for Kathy? And I have one request to speak. Anybody else one request to speak needs to fill out? Yes, please. We'll let Jim go first. Please come up, Mr. Wing.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You have to sit down and let him have them
Yield the floor.
at the right height.
Well, I'm Jim Wing. I live on Milverton Road. I am, for the last 15 years, daily I walk to downtown for shopping and back again. And I'm a veteran of several near accidents as a pedestrian in cars. And my experience has taught me that the number one safety hazard in downtown Los Altos is walking on the sidewalk by the parking plazas as cars come in and out. The cars, as they approach the sidewalk, cannot see oncoming traffic, and they just roll right onto the sidewalk, and they got to get well on the sidewalk before they can see oncoming traffic. And we do have congestion in downtown, and so it is tough for them to get in and out. And believe me, you're a pedestrian walking up there, and they just do not see you. I mean, they're traffic-focused attention. The placing adult size, and they are the size of a good-sized man anyway, 2 signs up in there in this little tight area. It's going to make a bad problem much worse. And also too, what the photos didn't show you, there are 5 of them with fire plugs in this same zone. They want to put these signs, and you got to stay away from those. So the positioning problem becomes very, very tough. Plus, there's 3 others that have either vaults or above traffic control boxes, which they cause this problem right now. So therefore, the space at that where they have shown is very, very limited. So I would recommend that, for safety reasons, that the PZ signs be released. be removed from the plan. I also have asked, since this came out anyway, I've asked several people, what was their opinion? Do you need a sign that tells you what the name of the parking plaza is? And most of the responses were negative. I can't remember those names. They questioned safety. Never use. That sounds like a lot of money. It's cost. One person who did like them thought they were cute. Another person said, I don't park in the plazas, I park on Lincoln because of the congestion downtown. So there is probably a mixed opinion in the public as to whether they would ever be used, the names. Because keep in mind, most people, you meet a friend downtown and say, where did you park? I parked by Safeway, or I parked behind the post office, or I parked over at Maltby's. We remember stores, but we probably will never remember the plaza names. So I think there are some more opinions need to be obtained to see if there's really any merit to this. And you have to ask the customers. The names I heard were not necessarily all customers of downtown. That were on the task force. The task force did a great job, but I'm again here. I'm giving you what my neighbors are, what other people are talking, and I even talked to some people from Sunnyvale and Cupertino who come to downtown Los Altos to shop, and who maybe they remember stores, but not the names on the signs there. The city. I have noticed that City Council has changed their project management strategy a little bit. We all know we had a streetscape program, didn't work out too well. Now, it was approved on concept drawings, and most people didn't understand really what was in the detail and what was really there. But you will notice that on the Phase 1B streetscape that just went through, staff had to bring it to council 3 times. And council, and James can attest to this, really went into the details so that before they made a decision on Phase 1B, they really understood every inch of that short section of the streetscape. And I think this is a very good management style that you should also follow as you review projects like this. Because the devil is in the details, and you really have to know what you're looking for. In a certain sense, when you approved the Morris Building, you said, give us three-dimensional CAD drawings of this. Put people in it. Let's get the real street view. You were basically wanting to get more details so you could understand what you were seeing from just the normal drawings that you do get. So I would take a look at this program with that level of detail. And also, too, as Kathy said, this will probably be broken up because this is going to, the price is going to be up there, and we may not be able to do all at once. So therefore, and the note is up there, it would be good for you to take the time and group the signs together. The El Montes, the El Caminos, prioritize the groupings to give council some other data as when they get the program. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question. How do you feel about, Jim, I live near Loyola School, and there's a turnaround where cars are, the mothers and fathers are delivering their kids in the morning. And then there's a sign right next to the sidewalk that you're talking about. And on the sign that's facing the pedestrian, walking out, like you say, or driving out, it says, beware of, something like, beware of pedestrians on sidewalk. And on the other side of the sign, it could say Plaza 7. Well, how would you feel about something like that? That gives a car that's doing the ingress, or in this case, the egress, warning that there's people on the sidewalk. Would that help matter?
What we have, that would help if there was space. And what we have is we have cars always parked right up to the end. That's one of the reasons the cars roll through the sidewalk, is because the parked cars are blocking their view until they get out beyond the sidewalk. If we had more of a, call it a green zone, which we don't have, yes, that would be probably appropriate. But it's not much space. And we've got trees there too. Pistachios are right up near the end. I mean, they are a problem there too. So there's no lead-in to who's on the sidewalk. It's blocked.
Other questions for Mr. Ring? No, thank you very much. Also requesting to speak is Nancy Dunaway. I got you. Thanks, Maddie.
Good evening, Planning Commission. I'm Nancy Dunaway, and I'm the Executive Director for the Los Altos Village Association. And last month, Kathy came and gave us a presentation, our Board of Directors, on the wayfinding signage, and we were quite excited about it, not only for the downtown, but throughout Los Altos, because we are aware of the strength of the business community throughout the city is beneficial to all of us. And we were excited about her energy and her passion and her vision for producing a wayfinding signage program. Is it perfect? We don't know. But we appreciate what she's done in the committee, and we thought there were some really terrific ideas, and this is something that we haven't seen come from the Economic Development Department, at least in my tenure. So we would love to see you work with Kathy and on the, as Jim likes to say, the devil's in the details, and we'd love to see this happen in some fashion, whether it's exactly as it's presented tonight or in a scaled-down version. But we really appreciate her effort, and we appreciate you listening to her tonight about it, because we're pretty excited.
Questions for Nancy? Thank you. Maddie?
Hi, my name's Maddie McBurney. I live at 149 Dowd Drive. I love that we are doing signage for our town. I think we absolutely need it. I don't think people can even see where to go when they're on Foothill Expressway, that Los Altos even exists. So I'm really, really glad to see this happening. I like the cohesiveness. I like the materials that are chosen. The colors are great, too. I'm kind of disappointed that nobody from the Public Art Commission was on the committee, but that's the way it goes. It'd be nice if there was I know you hired a graphic designer, but there are artists and designers that are on the Public Art Commission as well. My one concern is the typeface. I studied graphic design at Davis, so I know a lot about type. And although we love the Los Altos script because of its history and the granite, it's really hard to read. And it's not really a unique typeface. It's a standard typeface that you could buy, with all those typefaces from Apple, from Adobe. And there are really some awesome calligraphers that are out there that are artists that could do a new script, if you want to keep with script, that would probably show up better than this one and read better than this one. It's kind of, I don't know, it's just personal, I guess. I just feel like it's dated. And I know we want to stick with the history thing, but I feel like that typeface is very dated. And then my other concern is the serif type. So you guys know the difference between serif and sans serif. And using serifs takes up a lot more space when you're doing a typeface. If you take the serifs off, you can make type bigger and bolder. And I think that if you use sans serif type, it might not be as fancy looking, but you can sure read it a lot better. And when I saw these in the slide presentation from a distance, the things that stood out were the P. When the P is really big and bold, you see it. If we want people to be able to read Los Altos, it needs to be really readable. And we want people to me, I would like our city name to be bigger and readable rather than downtown, the word downtown. I mean, I want them to know it's downtown, but I want them to know here's Los Altos and there's downtown. So it's just kind of the way I saw these, they didn't pop at me as something I would like to see from a distance. So I think they need some revision. But all of this I love. I love the concepts and the materials. Oh, and one more thing. There's some really also cool contemporary things you can do with type with drop shadow. And it can be in a two-dimensional format, and it can pop the letters out to make them look like they're three-dimensional, and it doesn't really cost more. It's just a thing you can do with type to make it look more three-dimensional and just more interesting and not so flat. Okay, that's it.
Thank you. Questions for Maddie? All right. Then I have no other people wanting to speak, so I will close the public hearing, and I will ask, I'm not going to start.
Okay.
And we can ask Kathy, if you come up, we can have questions for her. That would be.
So first of all, when we got the package, I was really, really happy that we were doing something with our signage. Since we moved here about 10 years ago, I always used to wonder why the city didn't have anything which could define some sort of a cohesive sign component all the way, from San Antonio to Foothill to downtown. So this is great. I'm very happy to see this. I do have a few questions. One was the lighting, and it's mentioned in the notes also, up lighting. So I know that's something you'll look into. It'll have to be something mounted from top, I guess. But, and I know there's restrictions on budget, so, font cannot be three-dimensional where it's in a separate dimension that you have a black in the back and then the letters are sticking out. One question I have is, how did you come up with the color scheme of green and the orange? There's orange, I believe, in the parking signs, and there's green. I'm just curious.
That was something that was proposed by our design consultant. She was trying to sort of fit with the overall natural, earthy feeling of the community. So she suggested those two colors. They're just a starting point, so the orange can go more on the brown spectrum if people want to see it that way. Or
So is this what's presented to us? Is this more schematics? Will
Yes.
there be later on something presented to us, or a little bit more detailed, or how?
Well, this is just the initial schematic design concept. We still need to go and get cost estimates for all of this, and we wanted to wait to do that until we had some sort of blessing on the initial concept, because these are not easy cost estimates to get. These are not off-the-shelf products. So based on the feedback we get from our outreach, then we'll go forward and get cost estimates, and the design might change just based on what we're finding out about whether things are just going to be ridiculously too expensive, or whether it's not possible to manufacture them in the way that we are initially proposing. So yes, there'll be definitely a lot more iterations of this.
And would that come back to us?
I would imagine. I don't know at what point, whether it would first get into the CIP and come back when it's closer to actual implementation down the road.
Okay, so we might not get any input at that point in design, correct? Maybe? Just curious. I just want to know how much of an input we need to give now.
So, yeah, this is just a high-level review to comment on the concepts,
Okay.
the ideas, and the general design, which has been worked through with the committee. And the next step would be cost estimating and developing a timing schedule and scheduling it within our capital program and a construction detail. So that wouldn't necessarily come back to the commission, but if the commission asked for that to come back to them, it could.
I just was curious.
Yeah.
So here's my, overall, I love the theme. I do have a concern that the reclaimed wood, how much of a maintenance issue it would be down the road. They do weather differently, whether the sun is hitting or, the rain is hitting. So that is one concern. The one thing which I just am not comfortable with are the arrows. I mean, those to me are Stanford Hospital signs, like the round ones, go left, right. Just doesn't go with the feel of our downtown. It's very commercial. I don't know, to me, it just doesn't feel, the arrows don't, and I'm just giving that input since it's schematic and you'll be going back to the design team, but I think it's something more interesting with the arrows would have been more welcoming, at least for me. Right now it just doesn't go with the reclaimed wood feel which you have in the background. I don't know. I mean, it could be shadows of the kids pointing somewhere. I don't know. But something interesting that would define Los Altos. I personally don't mind the font of the city name. I've kind of gotten used to it, even though we haven't been living here for that long, but I'm kind of getting used to. So I would agree with my fellow commissioner that if Los Altos is mentioned in any of the signage, regardless is up or down, it should be consistent in keeping whatever that font ends up being, because I think that really then picks up on the name of the city. And you do have it in some cases. It's not on top, it's actually at the bottom, and it's got the same font. I saw it in one of the slides.
I don't think that's the case. I think the font is only used as a header, because we did have a lot of concerns, as was raised, about the readability of that font. And so, as part of our debate, we were.
So this is slide which.
Oh, here. This is in the downtown, in the monument sign.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it looks great because the name, whatever the font ends up being, I think I agree with her that it should be a little bit more consistent. And if I go to the parking, if you want to, I don't know which slide this is, 14 of 43. I'm on 14. This one. Okay. When you look at them separately, the parking P in the orange or red, it looks fine. But I think just the colors are something which is not, to me, jiving too well. Like the green with the bold white. If you're trying to be a little bit more earthy or fall colors or whatever, maybe the white needs to be looked at. And then I did actually go to the parking plaza because I had a similar concern, and I am to be blamed also. I roll out of those parking lots. And so I thought I should go check and see with the 3D where they are, just to, And I honestly don't think having anything even on this side would ever stop anybody from not rolling on to the sidewalk. The only thing I can think of is a steep bump right at the end where it physically stops the car. I went in my Jeep, I could see everything. But I went into the lower car and you really can't, it's not just that you can't see on the street, it's just that everybody's rushing out, especially after lunch hour. And I think having a speed bump is the only solution I can think of that nobody will actually roll. I personally don't think any signage is stopping. I mean, there's a lot of stuff there. We've had actually, this was last week, even though it was raining, there were a lot of people standing at the corner of the parking lot. And it's the same, it blocks, but that's not the reason for slowing down or not, at least in my eyes. I won't go into length. I think overall, I love the idea. I would really like to see a little bit more thought put into the graphics and the color. For some reason, the green, it's just not speaking to me. I can't pinpoint it, but it just doesn't work. So that's my feedback.
I really like this idea of having consistent signage throughout the downtown and throughout the city. I think it's just a great idea, and I'm hopeful that if it does happen in phases, those phases aren't too far apart. I like the materials, the wood, the iron, the screws, the stone. Some specific comments. As Malka said, I think anytime it reads Los Altos, it should be in the consistent script. And when I first saw the script, I really thought it was good. It accomplished that towny feel. But then I heard Maddie's comments, and I agreed with every one of them. I mean, if there was a way that you can change from sans serif to serif and somehow make it feel bolder and more readable and bigger, we should try to do that. If there's a way to do that through drop shadows, we should do it. And, I think that's the benefit of having someone with that really experience taking a look at this. It's sort of the benefit that we get when we have an architect on this committee. We get really that sort of peer review of other architects or other design professionals. So I would like to see that actually happen, where maybe this goes to the Public Art Committee to really look at those details. Like Jim was saying, the devil's in the details. The median in the entry, sign D2, this one, is kind of underwhelming. If this is the gateway to our city, maybe, I actually think it's okay on this end, but at the other end, I feel like this is one where we maybe consider going to the county to talk about different size and dimensions, because we just put a beautiful, we've just approved a beautiful building on the opposite side where we have asked them to put a really substantial sign that announces Los Altos. And then we have this right there in the middle on the opposite.
It's really constrained there. The median is really narrow.
Do you think we even need a sign there after what we've approved across the street?
Right. It may be duplicative. I mean, if we have some other, sign that's this much larger bench, maybe we ask them to incorporate the script or somehow. This is a little unimpressive. I also think it's a lot of green. I'd like to see more of the wood. For a lot of the monuments, I actually like the look and feel of some of the parking signs more than the others, and I was trying to figure out why it was, and I think it's because I see more of the wood as opposed to the green iron. I don't love the color. I would suggest that, in the same way we do with buildings, I'd want to see the color of the reclaimed wood, see the color of the iron, see the script in a substantial format before we sort of approve it on a wide-scale basis. I think getting solar lighting research started earlier is going to be better in terms of actually making it happen if someone starts to look at it now. And let's see. I hadn't really put a lot of thought into the arrows, but I kind of like your idea. They don't bother me. I'm not offended by them, but I do like the idea of maybe making that something artistic. Whether it's like you said, it doesn't necessarily mean a child pointing, but we're like a bike town. Maybe it's a gear from a bike pointing in a cool direction, or it's just something that maybe the public art folks can come up with. Something that really is different, that probably won't cost us anything. It's just a cool feature. So.
Okay. So a couple things. First, correction, I believe on some of your documentation reads Hillview Street. I believe that should be Hillview Avenue. Secondly, and people have raised this concern in various forms, but there is a big difference between concept and implementation, and I, for one, have been disappointed in the implementation on State and Main Street. It never came to planning for approval and serious review, but having knocked on 6,000 houses, I can tell you there are a lot of people who are pretty underwhelmed by our design concept in our downtown in terms of look and usability. Nobody sits on the new benches in town. The old ones may have been quaint, but at least people actually sat on them. Black granite doesn't quite work. So I'm not sure I entirely like the design, and I realize it's a takeoff on our downtown design. But given the feedback that I've heard through the community, I just highlight that as something. Consistency is good, but consistency with something that may not be timeless has me somewhat concerned. With regard to name coding the plazas, I can't remember my kids' names half the time, and I think lots of people have that problem. I would encourage us to look at color coding instead of name coding. And I think We've got all the north plazas the same, and you know what, if somebody visits, I mean, for those of us who live in town, we know where we park, but for people who come from out of town, you know, in the North Plaza's got 3 different plazas, and we may want to think of actually color coding each one separately, each of the north ones separately, central, each of the central ones separately, and the south, each of those separately. I think that would help a lot. I, too, am concerned about the visibility out of the parking lots. James, you don't recall, but I nearly was roadkill one time when you were coming out of... you do remember. It's a little worrisome that you remember. But it is an issue, and how we address it, I don't know. I think the notion of a speed bump or dip or something may ultimately be the practical thing, but if we're looking to increase the friendliness of our town, losing pedestrians is a bad way to go. So I would encourage us to look at that in the context of we may not have a choice in terms of where we place these things, but if we can avoid roadkill, that would probably be a good thing. The issue of signage and what the signs actually look like, this comes to us as informational. So we don't get to vote on it, I don't think, but I certainly would encourage, you know, we can, if it turns out well, we can all take credit, and if it turns out badly, you know, people can always blame the Planning Commission. But I think the font really does matter, and Maddie talks about it being too old-fashioned, and I guess I looked at it and I thought it didn't have enough character. It seems to me we need a contemporary spin on a historic or traditional font, and what that means, I don't know, but what we've got is sort of vanilla. I like the script, but maybe somebody can think about that a little bit more. It may not be changing that, but it may be changing the treatment of it in the signage. But it feels a little bit too mundane. And so re-looking at the fonts and how they actually go, I think, would be good. I agree that the arrows could be better, and they do look like Palo Alto Medical Foundation, which is not a compliment. And I think those are my comments.
Okay. Jim?
Oh, okay. Well, I'm going to reiterate a number of the comments that other planning commissioners actually mentioned. I do have my own comments. I mean, I definitely appreciate the effort. I mean, one of the things that I have actually struggled with is trying to figure out where downtown is, because it's not obvious from most of the thoroughfares around the city, right? So I think most people would, unless they've actually lived here for a while, really don't know where downtown is. And I think that's actually the main problem that we're actually trying to solve, I think. So I definitely appreciate the effort. I think it's actually something that's actually absolutely necessary. I am concerned about the budget, though. I mean, I think that the signs and the number of signs actually may, as long as we actually plan this out, and that especially if we can actually prioritize a lot of the signs that actually surround downtown and attract people to downtown, I think it's going to be a good thing. I share a lot of the concerns that everybody else actually expressed in terms of the font. Because I'm looking at one of the signage, and I noticed there's 3 fonts, right? There's 3 fonts of different types. There's one script, there's one kind of in sort of a semi-italic size, and then there's kind of I don't know exactly what it means. It's just too busy from a font standpoint. So I think that it really does need a lot of work in terms of making it a little bit more less busy. The other thought that actually came to mind is that I actually understand that this is actually a wayfinding signs, and so it really is intended to direct people. But I also noticed that the the P signs, the parking signs, just seems so prominent in terms of announcing itself, and I'm not sure that it's quite as. I don't think the objective should be to make it the biggest sign we can, but to make it a little bit perhaps more smaller, a little bit more quainter, because we want to preserve kind of the village feel. We actually want to kind of defocus a lot more from the kind of the overly commercial type of feel. And I think that, again, these signs don't quite reflect that for me. And I think that's pretty much most of my comments. I share Jim's concern about the rolling issues coming out of the parking lot. I mean, as someone who has formerly served on the Traffic Commission, I have some concerns in terms of how circulation works in terms of the parking lot. I actually don't think that the parking-related sign is going to affect that issue, plus or minus, perhaps. But I do think that we should probably look at it as well. I think that's actually something that we can potentially improve with maybe speed bumps or some other approach. But I definitely share some of those concerns. The old script in terms of Los Altos, actually, what is the historical context behind the script? Or is it this that it just came about at one point? I mean, does anyone know? When did that originate?
Well, I think it was first selected when those granite casings were placed around town, and that was probably about 30 years ago. I think it was a script that was selected then, and that's what's been used. And then once those were placed at the entry points to downtown, it's just been repeated on private projects. And
So it's been repeated on private?
Sort of handed down.
So it's been since the 1960s?
Yeah.
1970s, maybe? Early 70s? Okay.
But I think that's when that script was first, this is the first time I've seen it, and then it's just been used since then.
Yeah. I mean, I like the idea of preserving kind of the historical emphasis, but I'm not crazy about it. I mean, from an artistic standpoint. I would definitely support any motion that actually sends this to the Public Arts Commission, because it really needs some artistic view. I mean, it's just too boring. It just seems too shopping mallish. And I think that's basically what my comment is. So I think we need to spice it up a bit. So, okay.
So when I saw this on the agenda, I had the question of, it's an informational presentation, so we're not going to take any action. Is that my understanding?
We're just collecting comments.
So this is a way for public to give comments, to give some
Yes.
feedback.
So all these comments will be collected.
So I will give that feedback in that light. What I was thinking of is, as you come down 280, I'm not sure, is it Los Altos' next 3 exits as you come both ways? Because I was looking at the signage, and one of the things that brought my attention is at the signs. I'm going to start from A12, which is down by Foothill Expressway. There is no mention that there's downtown if you keep going to Los Altos, right? It just says, here's the Foothill Crossings, here's Loyola Corners, but it doesn't say keep going down Foothill Expressway to downtown. And
there's one sign along the way. We're trying to use the front and back of signs as much as possible. So there's a sign that's about a mile out that does.
Well, I was looking at A12. There's no, that says downtown, straight. Do you know what I mean? And
There's not a lot of room in those signs, so they get pretty tight. These collector auto directionals, I don't have all the messages, but there's just not a lot of room, especially the Foothill one, sorry. Once you label for Loyola Corners and Foothill Crossing, there's just no room to go downtown and still have the signs be readable.
Yeah, I was just thinking it would be nice to kind of lead people down Foothill Expressway rather than, okay, that's it.
There's also the fact that I think the other business districts feel like downtown gets all the attention in Los Altos, and we received a lot of input from the other business districts that they would really like to have their, Loyola and Woodland Acres.
I agree with that. I'm just trying to give people, if I'm coming off 280 and I turn on to Foothill Expressway, I see that sign, okay, great, there's one area, there's more to come, I guess, some way to keep people going. The other thing that I thought about was that On Magdalena, there is no signage at all as you're going down that street. So if you take the second exit, you go to Foothill Expressway, as I look at the plans, and you see Andronicos, but there's nothing that says Loyola Corners to your right and Foothill downtown to your left. The other thing I thought about was that the signs on Foothill, they look like they're proportionally spaced, which would be awesome, because if they were like a half mile or a mile apart or whatever the distance, this is as a bicyclist, it gives you some idea how far you've traveled. And then maybe as an automobilist, you would kind of get a sense of, oh, I've gone 2 miles, 3 miles. And in that, I don't know if you can do anything with that. I just was looking at it thinking, oh, they look like they're half miles apart, but they're not consistently all the way through. So that's a
Yeah, it's
observation.
really hard. I mean, there's a lot of location barriers. Like, you don't want to put them a set distance and then have it be behind a tree.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just was thinking about that. I also thought about that, like was mentioned, the downtown sign on Main Street, the one that's facing Foothill. I'm not sure that's needed because there is that new structure that we've said, and we're going to have this, really big, nice sign that says, here's downtown. If anything, I would say by the Chevron station, maybe there's a signage, so as you're coming the other way, you can see that. But something in the Meridian, you might want to question whether it needs to be there. What I did notice is that both on San Antonio and on Edith, especially at First Street, there is nothing that says downtown's to your right.
There is definitely on San Antonio at First Street.
I mean, my apologies, because then it was looking at the. So that's B7. Is that what the?
Sorry.
That's fine. I just was.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that'll say something. Okay.
I think E4 actually is the one. E7 was actually up from El Camino, and E4 will tell you coming in off of Foothill.
Okay. So ignore that. So this is related to signage, but just an idea that as I was sitting on San Antonio at the light, it occurred to me that we have a banner across Main Street. It would be nice, if it's possible, just this is something to consider, is a banner across San Antonio, because when you're at that light, most people drive up and down San Antonio and never think about what events are going on in Los Altos, and there's no signage about events, some way to put a banner across. But that's just some sort of gateway, or, there's the Festival of Lights coming on these dates, and
I'm glad you brought that up. I go down that street so many times a day, and I honestly just stumbled upon that it was a light festival when we went running that morning.
yeah. So I just,
Like, whoa, there's something happening here.
yeah. I was thinking, they're light posts, and it would be nice to put some sort of mechanism that we could display signage. I'm sure the Chamber of Commerce and the Lava Association would appreciate that.
Do we have access to San Antonio?
Yeah.
I agree that the arrows, it would be nice to have some sort of concept. There's a number of things that have already been mentioned. I won't reiterate them, but I do believe that if we're giving just information, it would be great to have the Art Commission look at this and give their perspective of signage. One of the things that I thought about is the colors of the parking lots. It would be nice because there is wood, and there was purposely done so that all those green signs could be replaced. But I noticed that in the parking lot signs, they're permanent, is what it looks like, because they're the wood signs that are put into the wood itself, or the letters are put into the wood itself.
It's true that the hours and stuff are there.
Right, the Redwood Plaza 2 part, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was wondering if that could be a color or some way to help. But again, I'm not an expert. I'm just kind of giving an idea that maybe the Art Commission would see that. And then the last thing, we've talked about solar lighting would be a great thing to have just for future. I'm sure that it would. I'm not sure the cost. I'm not sure if it's practical. Just an idea. And my other question, maybe this is for James, who finally approves all this? Is it going to go to the City Council for them to bless, so that if anybody from the public wants to give comments at that meeting would be appropriate then?
Yeah, there will be at least 2 more, if not several meetings before the City Council on this.
Okay. That's it for me.
Okay, well, last. So I think what we're trying to do here is to turn Los Altos into something other than a destination shopping area. And to do that, signage is essential. The way I look at Los Altos is I look at Los Altos as a major shopping center. I mean, honestly, I manage shopping centers that are bigger than all the retail combined with Los Altos, and all of these have kiosks and signs going in and out, and without them, shoppers would be lost. And so the way I look at Los Altos now is that we are sort of lost. So the idea that you're coming up with signage here, I think, is essential. And whatever the budget, you should look at it, because you've got to you want to start turning Los Altos into something other than destination. How about a drive-by? Oh, let's shop here, because I don't think that happens much now. People are coming, well, I'm going to go downtown, I'm going to get something, and I'm going to leave. So I'm going to be introducing Wi-Fi to the city here in a little bit. I talked to you about that, but that's another story. So let's make something Los Altos other than what it is now. And to do that, signage is essential. People have to know where they're going and and where to park, how to get there. And I think, personally, I like the green. I like the green signs. I think it's earthy. And I like the consistency of the signs. I agree with you on it. I was very underwhelmed at the sign on the corner of Main and Foothill. I know you have a limited room there, but cut a tree down. I mean, do something, because the sign is more important. The signs are more important than the tree. If you want people to start noticing our city more. Okay. Let me see.
Just love this.
I can't speak about TypeScript, but I agree that we should put it through some kind of a, what do we have, an arts committee? Or?
Well, I was thinking it needs like a branding, like a marketing committee. Here's the Los Altos brand name.
I agree.
That here's the emblem that, if you're a company, that's what comes up, right? And it's used in your letterhead and everything, but it's not just kind of at planning commission decides it's a script.
And just as an aside, we're having a parking study done. Will not the parking study incorporate ingress and egress signs also as part of the study, or are they just trying to maximize the site for parking?
I happen to be the project manager for both efforts. So it was one of the first comments made by our parking consultants, all the ones we interviewed at the RFP, that we needed parking wayfinding signs. And my comment back was, we're already on it. So yes, that would be a recommendation of the parking management study, but it's already being incorporated in this work.
Because you mentioned that someone mentioned that we should go through a traffic review, and I think we should go through a traffic review. And personally, I'd like to see it come back the Planning Commission before it went to the City Council. If you want to make a motion in the future that would get my attention, that would be it. Because I think we have a great beginning, Kathy. You've done a wonderful job. Your committee has, but we're not at the end. According to the comments I'm hearing. Turn it over to you.
All right. So this is very interesting. The reason it's interesting is because I hear a lot of comment, with the exception of Mr. Wing, that we really do desperately need wayfinding. I mean, part of it is practical to get people into town. Part of it is practical. People are in town and don't know where to find their car. Part of it is practical. It is aesthetic, because I thought one of the earlier slides that Kathy showed really personified how disparate and different generational. We have signs in town. We have engraved brown wood ones with white that look, they came out of shop projects in the 1950s. And then we have granite monuments. And then we have brown signs, white signs, green signs. Okay, so I heard it,
It
this
shows the timing.
there's definitely a history in our signage, and I think it would be a good thing for the town to have a consistent image, and I think Jerry pointed it out, and in terms of branding, Mike did too. Now, we may not agree that the script Los Altos is the brand that we want as a town, but I have to tell you that my sense from the committee is that there was sort of, there's forward-looking in the concept, but there was a lot of foot dragging into what would appeal to the most people. And I don't think we're going to get a consistency on that. In the same way, I don't think we're ever going to get consistency on color, because color is both contextual and incredibly personal. And so you like green, you don't like green, maybe you don't like that green, maybe you like this green. The thing is, the concept that came through that I think this showed is that it was colors that were comfortable with what goes on in town. So the orange was meant to be like the pistache trees when they change color in the fall, and the green was supposed to be natural to fit into the earth concept. Okay. As for the typefaces, I know we're looking for something that will be acceptable to the engineers who deal with the stuff on Foothill Expressway, and they have their own requirements for size and typeface. And so I can appreciate that these can be more artistic, and I'd love to get input from the Arts Commission, because we've got an Arts Commission, we should use it. But my expectation as a realist is that we're going to have to go for something that's middle. And there are certain qualms about, do we need 3 different italics and non-italics and then the script in one sign? I don't know. That's something that certainly I would love to have more looks at. But in general, I felt, and I feel the same way now, that it's a much-needed program, that we will find things that we do or don't like in it. But I have a wonderful thing that Suzanne Ambiel, who is the chair of the BPAC, sent me, which is there is a wayfinding webinar that's going to happen on Wednesday the 19th, and I'll pass it along to you guys. I can't speak for staff, but I suspect that for $75 for a non-member to go, we might be able to get the city to cough up for it, because wayfinding makes people do more active transportation, whether it's by foot or bicycle, because it encourages people because they know where they're going. And whether you like arrows with wings or whether you want them as triangles, we need arrows.
Yeah.
It took me 10 years of living in town to realize that the downtown was a triangle. I was constantly getting lost because I kept expecting it to be a grid. So I think we heard a lot of good comments here. I think the particulars of the parking exits, the rolling exit, I think that's an issue that I'd like to see brought up when I ask for direction on future agenda items, because I don't think that the parking signs are intended to fix that. I think they're addressing a different problem, which is if you are coming to our town for the first time and it's 12 noon and there is nothing available for parking on the main streets, how do you know to turn, that we have an incredible amount of parking behind? And when you look at Palo Alto, who has done a huge amount of parking garages, their program to find the garages makes it really easy, even if you know they've just built one, because you always know where to look for the giant P, and there's a reason. And I particularly say of all the signs, I'm most fond of the ones that hang on the lamppost, because they are accurate, they are efficient, and they don't add to the street clutter. And since I'm always looking for parking, I'm a happy camper with that one. What I wanted to ask Kathy is, if this is, do you need more feedback from us? I mean, you heard everybody has their own little ups and downs. I think there's a consistent feeling that it's a good program and that we need it, and that it will be implemented gradually because there's not enough money. It is going to be expensive. Even if these were even less expensive signs, there are a lot of them. So maybe one of the things that you can talk about when you go to your next presentation, if you've gotten that far, is it seems to me that the internal downtown signs are aesthetically satisfying for the downtown merchants, but in fact, maybe the program should start at the outer reaches and work in. So that's something to think about. I think that there's a consistent feeling that we have a great resource in our Arts Commission and it's not being taken advantage of. I have to say that the designer was incredibly accommodating for the number of people. You know what they say about a committee designing a horse and coming up with a camel? She worked her way through a huge spectrum of people whose opinions were incredibly diverse. And so I can see that it's not an easy job, and I think the Arts Commission will just add to it. But other than that, do you need more from us than what you've heard tonight?
No, I think this is really helpful, and I think we're very happy to get this feedback. It's really helpful to see people looking at it for the first time, because our committee looked at iterations and iterations and iterations over several months. So I think we'll definitely take this feedback into consideration. We can still move forward with a lot of the cost estimating and things like the details of exactly what the arrow looks like or the fonts and all that. Those are exactly the kind of details that are really easy to remedy in the further design stages. So I don't think any of that would hold us up from moving forward. It seems like you guys were on board with the overall materials and the overall concept and feel. So all those little details, and I'm really happy that they were more the little details than the overall this sucks, throw it away kind of thing. We can certainly work on, we can certainly take it to the Art Commission, we can certainly come back to you guys when we're actually moving forward and have this programmed and have some, actual timing and are really looking to implement it. This is really just the first overall concept schematic design that we're bringing to you.
Phoebe?
Yes.
Sorry, John.
And I know
You have-
John wants to go next.
Okay. I just have a thought. Was there any thought given to, I know the cost is an issue, and I would love to see this happen before my kids go to college. So I have a
Are they
question.
going
Was
to
there-
repeat any grades?
Yes, they're 8 years old and 6. So the question I have is was there any thought given to the, and I also personally, since I've joined the Planning Commission, I know it's very easy because a lot of people have been here before, but North Plaza, South Plaza, Plaza 1, 2, 3, I would love to see a name change. Even if I don't remember, it'll be great that it's something different than North and Plaza 1 and Plaza 2. Was there any thought given in trying to sponsor plazas so that the parking plaza signs can be paid for?
We
I mean, we are saying pistachios, but I mean, it could be, I don't know, linden tree or one of, or which is our
Passerelle
yes,
Plaza too?
yes.
Monster.com.
I mean, is there any thought given to that?
Moisten
Is that
Plaza.
possible?
yeah.
Is that a possibility or no? I mean, at that point, I see this happening sooner rather than whenever.
I don't think, I think the sign program for the whole city is the cost concern. I don't think that we can't afford, plaza signs so that they have to be,
No, I was just hoping that would offset and help us
Yeah.
so that we can, I mean, the ones on the street, on the lamppost are easy. But it was just a thought that at least, why not?
These signs are certainly going to be more expensive than the signs that we've been building to date, especially the old craft school signs, which
The
we
shop
actually build in our
projects.
own shop. And then,
They literally are the shop project, I told you guys.
Yeah, but it could be something which is an ongoing income
Right.
for the
But-
city also, because we'll have to maintain these signs
yeah,
as well.
maintenance is going to be more expensive as these get damaged. They're gonna be
Yeah.
much more expensive to.
So, I mean, just a thought, just thought.
And actually, Kathy had some very funny insights onto her discovery about how often signs get hit in our town, which is quite, it was staggering, to say the least.
Oh, my God.
My comment was with the support that this program has and the desire to do this and update all of our generational signs that we have that are all different from each other. I don't think cost is going to be the factor. It's just a matter of whether we do it all at once or we phase it over several years in our capital program. I think we have the budget in our capital program to do this.
Well, Phoebe hit it
You
right.
know-
We want to start on the outside and
Yeah.
work your way in.
Yeah, maybe we do the arterials first and we identify business districts and then we drill down into the business districts themselves.
Okay.
But John, wait, before you go, Renee, John's been waiting patiently.
I just have a last thing.
yeah.
I mean, just a thing that if I love his remark about branding, because this is branding the city, and then hopefully we can use it for other stuff. Maybe look into our seal. I mean, it has some specific colors in it. I don't know, but something which can be branded and used throughout. That's it.
So
you had 7 people up here and 10 or 11 opinions. And this is not unusual for this group. I think, as a whole, I think Los Altos sometimes is resistant to change and new things, and I think the more visibility and publicity this can have early on, the better. And, I realize...
As a process, you mean to get it approved?
Well, just to socialize the idea, as we say. And so I would love to see this in a more final form come to us, because more opinions, but I think it'll also would be helpful, because I think if people know that it's closer to being final, they actually pay attention to it. So I just think, we've had other programs that haven't gone as well as we'd like, and so I realize we can change signs in midstream and probably go back to making them in shop, but that's probably directionally the wrong way to go. So I think if we can get something and get it fine-tuned, it's probably a good thing.
Change is essential.
Change is
Change
difficult.
happens.
Change happens. I mean, he who was opposed to change is forever wheeled about by the changing fortunes of time.
And Ronita,
Is that a fortune cookie, or
Just telling you. And you can write that in the paper.
I'm going to let Ronit have the last word on this.
So if this is about visibility, and I really like Jerry's sort of vision for the downtown, then it has to be visible not just during daylight hours. So if everyone's on board with it, I don't think the idea should be that we do lighting or put in the lighting, but really plan for maybe that being in the second stage. I think it should be put in the first stage, so that come 6 o'clock at night, the town doesn't close up.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Kathy. This was a terrific presentation, and as I said at the time, I really respected the foot on the street stuff that you guys did. That was really quite awesome. So,
Great job, Kathy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I would like, before this disappears completely, it happens that this webinar is December 19th, when 3 out of 7 commissioners are out of town. But if anybody who is in town is interested in this, let me know, and I will, you can talk to James. I think there's a small slush fund for things
Yeah, we
like
have
this.
training budget for that.
Yeah, so I didn't call it slush fund. Oh, it was training budget. In any case, I was
Not in our budget
fascinated.
is slush fund, no.
It was I was intrigued. If I was in town, I would do it, because it does talk a lot about how you can take advantage of the fact that we're an eminently walkable downtown. And it would be really nice if we could capitalize on that by making it easy, so people will not only come downtown to shop, but also just come down to walk, and then they shop by accident. We have commission reports and then direction on future agenda items. Commission reports, Jerry was the representative at the city council meeting.
And I have my old report.
And we will get a catch, perhaps we'll let Malka do the catch-up first on the meeting that we didn't get the
Prior to
report
that.
on.
So I went through the entire report. Thank God there was not much to affect us. They did the Los Altos School District Task Force appointment, which was not much on our end. They were talking about the Egan Junior High. Egan Junior High School parking agreement. And then they were doing the budget for the 60th anniversary. They were just approving those. And then they had future agenda item. The only thing, I think, it was Jim's comment there for what was happening on North Street and the tree planting and things. But that was just a comment. Nothing was done about it.
Thank you. And now we have Jerry's report. Do you want to go check on the IT stuff? While Jerry does this? There it is. Okay, cool. All right. Go do your city council.
So I emailed Phoebe Tuesday and said, is there a reason why I should go to the city council meeting when it's really, according to the agenda, just a changing of the guard? She said that she was going to go, and I'll just say she encouraged me to go.
Strongly.
Strongly. So I thought, I don't have to get there at 7 o'clock. What's the difference, right? I got there at 10 after 7 and could not get in those doors. It was completely packed.
We had a big
And
turnout.
the only thing I can say is that I preferred the white wine to the red wine at the end. That's my conclusion.
It was a very, very nice changing of the guard. Many nice things were said about many people.
Not that
And
I
then there
heard
was-
one word.
I was inside. I got in 10 minutes to 7, so I got one of the last seats. And we then adjourned to Lacey for a lovely reception where everybody could make sure that the community, not only the people who were coming and going, but a lot of people, I was very pleasantly surprised at the turnout.
It was a who's who, everybody in the city.
And it's because it has always been, in my mind, almost a disgrace how few people actually vote in our elections. And I think everybody who voted showed up at this thing. And I thought that was good, and I hope there would be more next time.
There were also the city council people from Los Altos Hills. They were all
Yes.
at the meeting, so it was a
It was very, very nice.
joint community meeting.
So that takes care of it. Now we have, let's see what Mike has as a presentation for us as potentially a future agenda item.
Actually, this is something I'm going to be just sharing with the city council as part of public comment, and I wanted to share it because it is transportation, and I'll be going to BPAC as well. But has to do with the Greentown work that we've been doing in the schools, and I just wanted to share so that you guys could see what's happening with our students. I'll go through that later. But essentially, what we've done is we surveyed in cooperation with the Los Altos School District, Mount Clair, and Bullish Charter. We've asked them to count students at least 2 or 3 times during the year. We're trying to get to 4. The next count is actually in January, which is really great. We've done this now for 2 years, so we're getting consistent data so we can start seeing trends. The interesting thing is our little motto, teach a child to ride a bike safely to school lasts a lifetime, drive a kid to school lasts a trip. This is just how we did from this year to last year on just the numbers. There was a slight decrease. The most notable thing was Santa Rita with a new principal, didn't have anybody participate, so we're working on that. That pretty much drove most of the numbers down. Bullish Charter also didn't participate. Covington was less, as well as Montclair. But most of the schools, even though there's a reduction in the numbers, we've looked at, I compared from last year to this year for all the schools, and roughly it's about the same counts as far as the statistics. And those are that overall through the school, we're getting more people riding their bikes, walking to school, or using a carpool throughout the city. The most notable increase was in Loyola, who had a 31% increase in their students getting to school in a non-solo means, which is huge. Their Lions of Foot program is working. Springer had a 10% increase from last year as well. So I'm just.
What do you mean by block feeder school?
Oops.
Oh.
Did I go back?
Goodness.
Uh-oh.
I realized
All
I
right,
asked
James.
the wrong question. So you
So
said.
block feeder schools are, if you look at the schools, the elementary schools that go to block,
Block, okay.
are Oak, Springer, and Loyola.
Okay.
And half of Covington. As you go through, it's slide 5, I think. If you look at the schools as they stand, one more. If you look at those schools, Springer is the largest elementary, Oak second, Loyola third,
Aha, and that explains why block is so
and so
high.
block is so high, because the
Interesting.
kids, as they're getting ingrained in those schools, elementary, are leading to block, and it's part of their natural behavior. Where Egan has Gardner Bullis, they have to deal with Foothill Expressway, is a huge issue,
Yeah.
as well as from Almond, you've got to go across San Antonio.
When it shows a 10% increase in which?
It's just overall, and I've got, as I go through this, you'll see some other numbers. Let me see. if
And
this works.
Covington has the problem of El Monte.
Michael,
What about
what would the
high
result
schools?
of this conclude? What would we?
Just a show from what we did last year to this year. We're just showing that we're getting kids. We, Greentown, have been working with the school, city council has set aside money to do bike education, bike safety. We've been doing rodeos and assemblies. We're now looking at trying to do PE education to try to help. But it's
just showing that how it's working?
Yes,
Every
exactly.
effort? Okay.
just by encouraging.
What about
and
high
putting that
schools?
focus.
And Mike, I mean, the bit of trivia that I learned, I think you were at the same meeting, that if you compare to what Los Altos is doing compared to somebody like Palo Alto has about double the ridership that Los Altos has.
In proportion? It's a
Well,
much larger
it was
town.
high school, right?
As a
Yeah.
percentage of the school population, it's about double. And so Los Altos, as everybody knows, has a very significant issue on school days around drop-off and pickup. And, if we could get more kids walking and biking to all our schools, we would solve a tremendous problem we have throughout the community.
What's really interesting in this data is that 57% of our kids are traveling by some green transportation. So it's not as bad as people think. It was 50% last year, it's now 57%.
What about high schools?
That we haven't surveyed yet. In the high schools, you've got the challenge of when they get to junior year and their senior year, they drive.
Well, to keep in mind, too, one of the problems is that when you're a junior, you don't get a locker anymore.
Right.
And you can share a locker, or you can go into a lottery, and
Or you
that's-
leave it in your car.
or most kids take a car and leave their stuff in the car.
But since you are presenting this and you're working on it, I would highly urge you to work with the high schoolers, because we have kids in our house right now who are going to high school, and they've been riding the bikes and they've been carrying those heavy bags back and forth. The only reason they stopped biking just recently is because of the bikes being stolen in the high school, and they don't have cages in
So
there.
each of the,
and in
high-
in 1 week, they had 7 bikes. I mean,
So at each of the high schools, they have carbon-free commute groups. They have students that are green groups that are working on that specific issue. So as our organization, we believe if we can educate the elementary schools,
They'll get
middle
there.
schools,
Got it.
high school becomes a no-brainer. I mean, it's the way they do it. They don't think about it. And that's,
Mike, whatever happened to the program that required kids to actually scan, right? Scan when they are walking to school.
Right.
Like, can we collect that data?
so the frucometers that were installed at Almond, Santa Rita, Egan, and I'm missing one. No. Oh, is it Loyola? No, Springer. The voltage system, what we've discovered was most of the kids, it's not a reliable method of counting, because you could have it on your backpack and you could drive to school and you could walk under it. It would count it. So unless we put them in more places and to really expand that program, it was a very difficult thing to manage. So we looked at, it was easier to spend 1 minute in class to ask that question rather than relying on data that we weren't sure was accurate or not.
have you, is there any thought given to, if you're talking about elementary schools and little kids, to encourage them, maybe they have like a punch card of however many times they've gone, and then the downtown vendors can pitch in and give some sort of an incentive, like Area 50.
151.
Yeah, they can give some coupons or something that they've finished their punch holes or whatever.
Yeah, at each school we've contacted, working with the PTA and the volunteers. They've conducted, specific schools have tried different things. Oak has done hot chocolate once a month, and it's interesting because Santa Rita is adopting some of those. And it's the same thing. How do we incentivize? And each school is a little bit unique. But yeah,
That
we're
way we
looking
get our
at exactly-
downtown to be interested in what the kids are doing and get the kids to downtown and have them bike there.
and I've talked to the Los Altos Community Foundation because they have a youth group that they empower to do grants, and that's one of the proposals that I have for them. Can you come up with some plan, or can you grant money to help reward kids, that go across Loyola Corners, that bridge over Foothill? I mean, if you look at it, and we heard about that, last meeting, I want to just, every kid that goes across, give them, here's a $10 gift card. Thank you. I mean, that is a real,
Scary intersection.
very scary intersection.
And actually, James and I were talking about, I've been in contact with Jim Gustafson because none of us was real happy with the designs that we saw, and so I did a sketch of something that was rather out there, and I sent that to Jim, and he went, wow, I hadn't thought about anything like that.
Cool.
And James has some thoughts about, appropriately, he feels that a 4-lane bridge is going to be out of proportion for our small town. And so he and I were kicking around ideas about, I remember at the time we were talking about if the county listened to BPAC and did not block the bike route along Fremont, because they thought they should shorten the route of travel for pedestrians there, and instead took that money and shortened the route for pedestrians on the other side, where it's really dangerous. Even, I mean, that intersection has been under study for a long time, but that would be a relatively painless way to distribute money in a way that would at least make it less hazardous, if not wholly improved. So I would encourage people to be in contact with Jim Gustafson and find out, again, I have no idea how receptive the county will be, but my feeling in general on this is the more squeaky wheels they hear, the better off we'll be, because if we do nothing, we're going to get 1950s brutalist bridges, and without any consideration to our bike routes being disrupted or our kids not being safe in a side that's really complicated movement. And so if we keep putting input in, I can only think we'll get good out of it. So I suggest you email Jim and ask him what the best way to do it, and he said he'd get back to me, and he can get back to you, too. So is there another?
Yeah, just a
there's
couple
not more. Yeah.
There's only 2 more slides. This one shows that as kids progress through their grade level, up to 3rd grade, they pretty much are standard, but after, when they start 4th grade, you can see that if you look at the first 2 green shades, you can see the numbers increasing. So those are the number of kids biking and walking. We're seeing dramatic increases roughly around 3rd or 4th grade. That seems to be the age that parents are more likely to let go of their kids. In the 2 right columns, the first one is how year to year by the grade level, but the second one is actually more interesting, which is year to year by the class level. So the kindergartners last year, were they this year as first graders? In each of the grades, except for those 8th graders, it's up percentage-wise. So more kids are doing, biking and walking to school than they were last year in that other grade. So, and then lastly, oops.
Oh, no.
Oh, that's it. So that's.
Okay. Thank you, Mike.
And I'll be sharing that. I'll be sharing that with the city council next Tuesday.
Excellent. Okay. So.
Thanks, James. Thanks, James.
For future agenda request items, how do you guys feel about Maddie's question about whether she can come and give a presentation about artistic bike racks?
That would
so that
be
we
awesome.
can have a.
Let's do it.
All right. So, James, can we get that on the agenda then?
Sure.
Because I think it would be nice if there was a booklet, and when someone said, I'm doing a project in town, and I understand you guys in the planning department want me to put in bike racks, you go, yeah, and here's a booklet you can pick from anything you like in here.
So the goal is for us to become informed, but is it to ultimately come up with standard approved
I don't know if it's
designs?
standard, but
Let's
it's
see what Maddie's
Okay,
got, because
all right.
it may be that there's a panoply, and then if we know that there are 8 or 10 out there with varying price points, and if someone says, I'm proposing this one, and we can say, well, have you looked at that one? Which
and it's not won't be standards, but at least it would be something that they can go off that, okay, this is what we have in mind or we like.
Well,
and if they want to propose something which is nicer, great.
even better.
Yeah.
But I think we should make it clear that it's not the one that they found may not be the only one available.
Another question
Yeah,
with that,
let's put it-
James. I know that we talked about art being part of an incentive. If they did art in public spaces, I wonder if bike racks could be that same thing. Artistic bike rack. If somebody decided to put an artistic bike rack, that they would be able
Get
to
some
get
credit for
some
it.
credit for.
Yeah, I think that's the issue. We have a bike rack standard, and it works well, but it's not very popular. And in past cases, we've said, no, if it's going to be in the public right-of-way, it has to be this bike standard that's in our engineering spec sheet. I think the decision would be, should we allow any bicycle parking if we find that it's interesting or creative or attractive?
Right.
Yeah, but it'll still have to go through the city's, guidelines just to make sure it is,
Right. Well, we would just, instead of saying you have to use our standard, we would encourage unique, creative bike racks, and that would be
Correct.
reviewed through the development review process.
And I think at this point, we're in agreement, we'd like to have Maddie give us a presentation so we can be better educated, and then we can move from there with the recommendations we'd like to do after. The second agenda item would be, do we have support for, as the transportation part of our name, looking at the issue of the rolling exit out of the parking plazas?
Yep.
I would like to.
I don't know what we can do, but
At least we can raise our
Well, the question is, James, is something being looked at that we don't know of at this moment?
Not regarding that matter. I'm downtown as much as anybody. I don't.
Well, you almost
quite
hit
as-
John, we know that.
Quite as dangerous as other
was
people do, I
aiming
guess.
for me.
But yeah, I guess we could ask our traffic engineer to make some suggestions. I think a speed bump is probably the most effective, and you put it 5 feet back from the curb, and that forces a car to stop, and they have to roll over it.
And then a sign that says, as they say sometimes coming out of the garages in Santana Row, watch out for pedestrians. I mean,
I
they
doubt
just
that-
watch out so they can hit you as you go by.
Yeah, I doubt that more
And in
signs
our,
are going
yeah,
to
in
be
our,
effective.
by the time you're coming out, there's just so much happening in front of
Yeah.
you with the trees
Yeah.
and lights, and nobody will read what's written.
Signage would just be one more
Get off the
distraction.
cell phone at the time, you know,
Probably the bump.
Hang up and drive.
Probably a speed bump with yellow stripe thing.
It would
I think
stop the car.
I think it would have slowed people at least down so that they're a lot more.
Yeah, and there's some real hazards. I mean, some of the telephone cabinets
Oh, yes,
are
the switch boxes.
just
Right.
Huge.
huge. Yeah,
Well,
massive.
and they're blind corners. I mean, there are a couple of lots as you're leaving. You just can't see around the corner.
Well,
What I experienced personally is when people pull up and they're looking to their left to see if a car is coming.
They're still
and they're
Pedestrians
walking,
coming from the
and then
right.
they just start driving without
Yeah.
looking to their right. Well,
Yeah.
even if there's a speed bump, they may still do that. But
Yeah.
At least they're slowed.
Well, so could we have this as a discussion item with someone from traffic engineering? So that we can present it as a problem, and then we can discuss some of the things we're thinking of. And if we know enough in advance when it's going to happen, we can do a little on-foot research, as opposed to on-car research, and figure out if there's, I mean, we can make suggestions, or we can simply analyze what the problem is and let the professionals do it.
How about one more thing?
I have a third one, so go for yours.
Well, it's just, we've mentioned it so many times in every meeting. How about, why don't we reconsider renaming the parking plazas?
I would love that.
Well, now, I know that City Council probably will have their own ideas about this, because I have to say that during our wayfinding committee, the names were really, it was, contentious isn't the right word. We had a lot of difficulty finding out names that people could all get behind, and I think the issue is, at this point, there's no identification. Really, if you don't know where you parked, it's tough. You can't even describe it to anybody except, as Jim said, to say, I'm behind Maltby's. But certainly we know there's an
The
issue.
majority of people in this city do not know where Plaza 1, Plaza 2, North Side. They have no idea. They'll just say, I'm in the plaza.
Well, they didn't know
I'm
they don't even know there are
behind
10, so there's the question. So we know there's an issue. I'm not sure that this is in our purview. I mean, City Council will see it as part of the wayfinding program, and so it may be something that we can talk about.
And the wayfinding committee at least presented? that
Oh,
that is
well,
something would
there
be
is. I mean, there were 3 names.
Well, what
There
about
was,
the people that are doing the traffic? I mean, the parking study, is that something?
is that part of parking study? James might know that.
yeah, they can make some recommendations on that. I mean, when you see, very large parking facilities are usually color coded because people don't
Color
remember
and
names.
number
like-
and name. They sometimes do all 3.
Right, right. I'm in blue and it's number 10.
Or they have symbols, something.
I mean, personally, I think if we just labeled them 1 through 10, then people
Big
could say
numbers.
Yeah, big numbers. Then if you're telling somebody meet me in parking plaza 3, well, then you would see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Absolutely.
It's the easiest way to do it.
Yeah, I think.
Well,
but
whatever
it's-
it is,
but
just
then we're-
should have
Well,
some
we're also, then you have to deal with the fact that we want the house to have, the town to have charm and be down, the spirit of the charming downtown, and so
the letters
names.
say that they could be in French.
I don't
We had
think-
enough trouble. Someone said that pistache was difficult for people to pronounce, so you know we're up against lowered expectations.
The other thing on the sign was would something on the street lights. I mean, oftentimes I pull in a parking lot and then I go, okay, I park somewhere, and I look around.
Well, that's like in the
It's-
airport parking lot,
Right,
where
and
they
then
put
you-
the signs
And then
on
you're
on
clicking.
the street.
Yeah, like,
Where are you?
like if
I'm turning
got out of
on
the car and like looked and I'm on the 3 blue whatever. At least I know, because driving in I hardly look at where I'm parking, and then I think
You're
about
supposed
it.
to drop a pin on your iPhone.
Okay.
So we talked about Maddie making a presentation and something from the traffic people to talk about the rolling exits from the parking plazas. And Can we talk about the names on the parking plazas as well? I think we can have a short meeting item about that.
Maybe in the last item, we just ask our parking consultants to make a recommendation on that.
And not just a recommendation a priori. Let them make a recommendation and tell us why.
Right.
Because there was some, when Maddie was talking about sans serif and serif typefaces, when I was in the arts, which I was in my youth when dinosaurs roamed the earth, I was taught that serif faces were much easier to read than sans serif. And since they're also in the style of our downtown charming town, I have no problem with the serif typeface. I also know that anything that's on the Foothill Expressway has to meet engineering standards, so there's a lot of conflicts and constraints on this, I should say. The last item I was going to ask, is there anybody interested in this webinar?
What's the date?
It's December 19th, a Wednesday at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Eastern Time. So that means it's at 12 noon. You could do it as a lunchtime. It's on the web, so just be near a computer at lunchtime.
Oh, I can do it.
And we have training
It's on the
budget
web.
for commissioners.
As long as I don't have to be physically there, I
We have
can.
training
be
budget
in
for
your fuzzy
commissioners to do this?
slippers.
Yeah, in Pakistan doing it.
Forward a copy of that to everybody.
I'll tell you what, I'll
Yeah,
forward
I'm
everybody in the
interested.
committee a
Yeah,
copy
just
when I get
send it.
back tonight.
That'll be the easiest.
Let me
And
do
then
that, because
I had a question for James.
as far as I'm concerned, if anybody, there are no other committee meetings, then ask your question of James, because
Well, no, actually, because I think this is relevant to us as a commission, I noticed when I was looking at Palo Alto's map, having to do in the Rastadero, they have actually the traffic flow through town. Do we have something similar? And it was done, I know theirs was done 10 years ago, but does Los Altos have, how much traffic's on Foothill, how much traffic comes up San
Yeah,
Antonio?
we have traffic counts,
Yeah,
for
we do.
sure.
But
Yeah,
is there,
Ours is about probably that old, too, but it's in our circulation element of our general plan.
so is that where to look for it?
Yeah.
When is our next general plan update, James?
Well, we're doing the housing element again,
I had a feeling we were coming to that.
yeah, in the next year or two.
Okay,
And then the general plan doesn't have to be updated again until we think it's outdated.
okay, but
The
we are doing
circulation
that.
element is very much in the complete streets, not widening streets to facilitate traffic, but narrowing streets to facilitate pedestrian movement and bicycle movement. So it's still current.
Okay.
And our land use element is still current. And then the other elements they're not as dynamic as circulation and land use, so. But when we feel it's not current anymore, that's when we would update it.
But don't we also have a mandate from the state to update it at a...
Only the housing element.
Only the housing
And
element.
that just got updated a couple of years ago, right?
And we're already on the
They're already
cycle to
on it
update it
again.
again. Yeah.
Because my
I just,
go ahead.
sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, my concern, when we're talking about parking, it's like how much traffic is coming from which direction. That would be really kind of interesting to know rather than, okay, well,
We think it's this. Yeah, there are numbers,
Yeah.
there are statistics.
Yeah.
And we count our key intersections like San Antonio and Foothill regularly, so you can calibrate our 2002 general plan, to see how much those numbers have changed, and get a sense how much they've changed as a whole.
cool.
I just have a comment, and this is something, just bringing it up because I don't know what's happening in the future, if there's anything which is coming in front of us or the council. The bus stops, I know we discussed it, and I know council disagreed, thank God, and nothing happened with those bus stops. But that very expensive bus stop in front of the new building, I have been driving when it's raining, when it's sunny. Honestly, I feel terrible for those kids. They have no shelter from the rain. They can't sit on it during sun because it's hot. And they have no shelter from the rain when it's raining. And there's nothing close by where they can stand underneath. And I just feel like whatever we have in the future, we've got to be really sensitive. And I'm running in the evenings through downtown. Those benches, people are not sitting there. They used to. And it's just like dead. And it's when I cross it, I'm like, oh, there was sound of some water. Yeah, oh, there's water somewhere. But it's just, I just feel like if there's anything coming forward, even in front of us, we should have staff really look at it before it gets to us, that it should be practical and usable.
We are learning we do learn from our mistakes.
Yeah, and that's why I just wanted to bring it up, that we
We're very
remember.
updated.
Yeah.
Okay, with that, I will adjourn the meeting.